It's right about the top of the hour, so I'm going to get us started. If you have any problems with audio or anything else, please feel free to mention something into the chat box. But we are going to get started with what I am assuming is a pretty popular topic, since we had almost 300 folks register for this, which would be an all-time Gatehouse high. So I'm guessing that search engine optimization is a pretty important topic to all of you folks who are on the line right now or listening later on via the video that we'll provide afterward. So we'll get started in just a second with David Stone. I do want to say we have about 15 minutes for this first session. If you have a question, go ahead and drop it in that chat box in the bottom left-hand corner. However, we may have David get to it after the fact today, because we will be running through both of these in as quickly as we possibly can. And without further ado, I hand it over to the Senior Manager of Search Strategy and Content Distribution. Now I have to rest after I say all that. Mr. David Stone, who happens to be in studio with us. How are you, David?
I'm doing well, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm here today to talk SEO big picture in this first 15 minutes. So kind of touch on some things that are fairly new in Google, or at least new to Gatehouse, since search as a channel is one of the largest traffic drivers to Gatehouse sites. It's a very important thing to focus on. So what tends to drive traffic to sites for SEO is a combination of two things, and that is tactics. What are the tactics that you are using? And I know I'm going to be talking some about that in the next session, as well as doing a deeper dive next week. But also want to touch on some things that I'm seeing around the technology that Google is really using to visualize content within Google, because you want to make sure when they're popping up a particular carousel or box on that page one of Google that you're thinking through how you can get in that real estate. So the two things I want to talk about is I want to look at video, and then I also want to talk about Google AMP and what that means for you, and just some questions for you to be thinking about there at the local market.
So let's talk video. Let's start off with a little video, David.
So yeah, this is something that of course videos have always, and I want to say always, but for a long time have showed up in Google. But a lot of the video has historically been YouTube videos. But in the last few months, Google has really made a big shift in this, and they've made it specifically where I'm seeing this is in viral and breaking news type keywords, where they're really starting to show what I'm going to call the video carousel on desktop and on mobile, where they're pulling video in to things that historically they have not. So as an example, I have two screenshots that I've put into the slide. You can see I just typed in Austin news, which is a big evergreen news term for the Austin market. And you can see right there at the top is on the left image is a video carousel, and then you're looking at desktop there. And that's above the scroll. You're seeing that immediately. And that's something that really has just been happening with any sort of frequency just in the last few months. And to your right, then you see on a mobile screenshot that I took, the mobile video carousel for the same search term. So again, just something I'm seeing with a lot more frequency that we want to be thinking about. And as an example here, this is just this week. Melissa Howard, there's a story that happened in the Sarasota market, and this is just typing in Melissa Howard, and Google is understanding that suddenly, Melissa Howard was getting very few searches, and now she's getting a lot of searches in Google. They're understanding that this is like a viral query that people are searching for with some frequency, and when you type in Melissa Howard on desktop, you're getting that top stories box. You'll notice Sarasota there on the right, getting really good coverage in Google, but then right below it, you'll see that video carousel pop up. So again, just something really new that I'm seeing.
What do you think the reason is for that? Just because they want to promote more video as much as possible?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. It gets into Google AMP, it gets into video, it gets into images. Google 10 years ago is all about the blue link,
right.
you know.
Yep.
But now they're able to take data from our sites and able to visualize that in Google in more creative ways. And I really think it's because they're getting they're collecting a lot of user data to try and get them to engage with that page.
Interesting. Okay, so this is some search engine stuff from the Statesman.
Yeah, so back in February, we did some code work, and that allowed us actually to make sure the videos were in the video carousel, and that was back in February. But you can see around March, you can see this gigantic spike, and what you're looking at is actually video content starts, so videos that started being watched that came from Google in this, and actually this was all search engines, not just Google, but the biggest lift was of course Google. But you can see where it was, just trending along almost like a flat line for a while, and then that big swoop. And almost every site that I'm looking at that I have access to the data, when I look at what's happening in Google with their video, I'm seeing this uptick, and so that makes me just posit a few questions. I guess is there at the local market, it's probably a good time to look at your video and see if search is sending referrals to your site, or I would also say YouTube channel. I think it was Adweek or Digiday, I can't remember, but I think they said that currently the video in Google, it's about 56 to 60% of YouTube videos, which Gatehouse is on the YouTube platform. Sure. So I would actually look at your site referral traffic and also your traffic to YouTube and see if you're seeing any bump there, because a lot of newspaper publishers are. And then the second thing I would say is, does your video strategy include SEO best practices? And over the next week, I'm going to be doing some sessions where I'm going to get more granular into the SEO best practices. But a lot of SEO best practices for, let's say, a story page also apply in the most basic sense to video, meaning when you write that title, are you giving a thought to what the user is going to search for? And then you also have a description or caption, an opportunity to kind of give a little bit more detail. Are you thinking through how you're filling that out? And
there are so many times when you'll see a good story, perhaps a good headline, you get to that video, and the video headline is, such and such speaks, or not even so significant. That's a huge missed opportunity, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to give away my second session here, but people tend to search people, places, and things, and so what is the video about? What would someone search for in YouTube or in Google, and make sure that you're getting something that makes sense, to the user, but make sure you're filling that out.
Perfect. Some questions to ask. Are they sending? Does your video strategy include SEO best practices? Perfect. So that's good news for folks to be looking at that on a consistent basis. Now on to AMP, which for most folks, they understand what that already is. This is a huge addition to the Gatehouse arsenal, correct?
That's correct. And again, Google using technology to drive traffic is just really seen a shift in the last couple of years. And so just I know AMP came to Gatehouse, I believe, in April. So, but for those of you who just want a few bullet points on it, it's for mobile devices. That's where you're going to see that lightning bolt. It's rankings over real estate, or excuse me, that's actually backwards. It's real estate over rankings is actually how I would say that. And going back to the 10 blue links, it used to be all about trying to rank yourself within like the 10 blue links of Google. Well, now this AMP carousel is showing up in mobile for breaking news. And if you don't have AMP pages, you can't be in the AMP carousel. And I'll show some images of where it shows up very high when trending news happens, or let's say people that are well-known, prominent people, it will show up for that. And so it's very helpful for breaking news because, again, when something big in your community happens and people start writing about it, Google picks that up, realizes a lot of people are reporting it, and they'll often start pulling those AMP pages right into it. And so it's very helpful for breaking news. It's fast. It's pretty cool. You click it, it loads almost instantly, at least to the eye. And if you're curious as to what it looks like when you're on mobile, on google.com, look for the lightning bolt, and you're looking at an AMP page. A couple of examples of that. This happened late last year, and at the Palm Beach Post, who I am coming from Cox Media Group into Gatehouse, so I worked with the folks at Palm Beach Post quite a bit. But this was late last year. You may have heard of the Catch Me Outside. How about that, girl? I actually, when I've showed this in person, I try and get people to say that, because I want to see how they say that. But the Palm Beach Post actually broke a story where they interviewed the father and some things like that, and so some interesting things. So in this case, I said, "Cash me in Google. How about that?" And the Palm Beach Post actually did. What you're looking at here on the right is for that term, again, cash me outside, probably a term that was not typed historically in Google very much.
Unique search. Which
is the interesting thing about the business that we're all in, is that oftentimes we're reporting things that had never happened before, or at least not referred to often. And then not only is it happening, but all of a sudden people are searching for it a lot. And so Google picked that up, and if you see on the right side, there's two Palm Beach Post stories, and you'll see that Google AMP lightning bolt for a term that went from 0 to 1 million searches in probably a day.
Wow.
So on the left, what you're looking at is a tool that I can use called Google Search Console, where I'm going to go look, and Google will provide me some data. And what we're looking at is two terms, Cash Me Outside and Danielle Bregoli, which was her original name. I think she's actually turned most recently hip-hop artist, I believe, and she has a new name, and which fails me. But what you're looking at the top is total clicks to those from Google, meaning just all of Google traffic, as well as the average position in Google. But if you look below, you can see that the majority of the traffic to those two keywords to Palm Beach Post came from Google AMP. The click-through rate, meaning the rate at which people clicked on it from Google, as well as the average position. They averaged in position 1 for those terms, and that was driven by Google AMP. And Google AMP is just, again, a great opportunity for news publishers for breaking news. And you can go to the next slide, Tim. Google AMP has helped generate for Gatehouse 10 to 15% page view growth in the organic AMP mix channel each month, year over year, since implementation in April. And we implemented this at CMG before I came here, and we experienced something very similar as far as
what are the
growth.
downsides to AMP? It strips a few things. It strips a few digital pieces, correct?
Yeah, it's lean and mean. Their code base is pretty strict as far as the tagging that you can use. And so I would, the way I describe it is your mobile pages are like a Camry. They're a little bit slower, but they're really reliable. The AMP pages are like a race car. They go really fast, but you got to change the tires a lot.
Gotcha.
So actually, just a recommendation that I didn't actually have here, but as we're talking about it, is when you have a really breaking news story and you're working it and you're putting in the work and you're doing the tactics, it may be looking in mobile for that story to see if an AMP page exists. Because I've actually found the Gatehouse AMP pages to be very reliable, actually very low in errors, but it is something that sometimes when a big story happens, I will check just to make sure.
We have a bunch of questions. I'll get them to you after, but one quick one. Someone thought that Google shut off the ability to figure out what people had typed into search to get to your site. Is that true, or is that back?
So actually through a tool called Google Search Console, Google actually provides me the queries. They provide you me with 16 months of data, and I can actually look at that. There's also other tools, third-party tools called SEMrush, things like that, where you can actually go see the search volume to the pages of your site.
All right, cool. We'll get to the other questions after, but also maximizing maximizing AMP happens when you maximize SEO best practices. Why is that so important when it comes to AMP?
You got a fast car, but you still need a good driver. And the good driving happens there at the local market applying SEO best practices.
Good stuff. Okay, we're going to go through just a couple of quick takeaways because it is almost quarter after. Video search strategy. I mean, it's so important to make sure that you're thinking about that when you see those videos that go out, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is something new to video. Think about those SEO best, new to Google, and that's how much they're showing video for searches that we want. And so just think about those SEO best practice. Google changes their mind sometimes, but I think this is going to be here to stay.
Okay, and also on AMP, I mean, again, making sure you've got the best practices, which we'll get to more of in the next session, but just a great tool to have. I love your analogies with the race car.
It's a fast car, still needs a good driver.
Awesome. For those of you who are ducking out here, we'll give you the video, we'll give you the slides, and also you should sign up once you get the slides for next week, David's Digital Cafe presentation. He'll give you 5 tips to increase your search traffic, and thank you for being on the opening session. That takes us right in.